Carson Area Metropolitan Planning Organization to order, and I'll start off with a happy Valentine's to everyone, and thanks for sharing it with us. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Novak,
Here.
Member Henderson,
Present.
Member Schutte,
Here.
Member Maloney,
Here.
Member Erb,
Here.
Member Dodson, ex officio Member Rosenberg. Thank you. A quorum's present.
Thank you so much. We are now on to agenda item number 3, which is our opening public comment. Do I have any beginning public comment? Okay, then we're going to move on to agenda item 4, which is approval of our minutes of January 10th, 2024. Does any member have any corrections, changes, updates? If not, I'll accept a motion for approval, please.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
I will second.
Motion and a second for the approval of the minutes of January 10th, 2024. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. We're now on to agenda item 5A, which is just for discussion and presentation regarding progress on our local road safety plan for the Carson Area Metropolitan Planning, or I'm just going to say it, CAMPO. Let's see, do I have disclosure? Is that, no, not that one. Not that one? Oh, sorry, B, not A. Okay. You gonna start us off?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager, filling in for Kelly Norman tonight. Walking through our presentation here, I pulled it up on the screen. Here to really give a kind of a summary update on the local road safety plan and what we've been doing and the next steps associated with this, and should advance, and it's not advancing, so we're gonna try something else. Okay. There we go. So I'll begin by talking about the background and purpose, touch on some of the stakeholders and crash data. I'll move to discussion about priority locations, proven counter safety measures, and finally I'll discuss some of the next steps in completing the local road safety plan. So there's a procedure for developing local road safety plans that begins by analyzing data and identifying areas to proactively address safety needs, identifying and prioritizing intersections and corridors, engaging with stakeholders, prioritizing projects, implementing proven counter safety measures. This then prepares us for a plan to fund these projects and to implement each of these projects. There's another element to this plan, which is the why. And why do we need this plan? And I would argue that this plan has an element of humanity. In the last 2 days, on January 25th, before our site visits, 10-year-old Ella was crossing Highway 50 in Highlands and never made it home. 3 days after our site visit on North Carson Street in Nye, 14-year-old Lexi was crossing the crosswalk and was killed by a driver that never saw her. Those are some of the reasons why we're doing this plan. We're working together with our partners and our stakeholders, this board, community members, to address local road safety concerns. And that's why this plan is so important. Speaking of those stakeholders, I want to thank them who have been participating. We have a number of stakeholders. We've been engaged with them for a number of days and different meetings. We've been participating, and I know Kelly appreciates their effort and the time that they've put in for making this plan better. This is just a summary of those stakeholders. Kimley Horn has been working as the consultant with NDOT and CAMPO for the preparation of this plan. We've been looking at crash data from the most recent 5 years, between 2018 and 2022, focusing primarily on fatalities and serious injuries, also known as K, fatalities, and A, serious injuries in the CABCO classification of crashes. This graph on this slide here shows fatal and serious injuries by year. The blue bars indicate the total number of crashes. The yellow line represents serious injuries, and the red line represents fatalities in the CAMPO area. The total number of crashes each year since 2019 has been decreasing. However, the number of serious injuries and fatalities remains constant and still elevated. The slide showing, this slide here shows a heat map of crashes across the Campo area. While crashes do primarily occur on Campo's arterial and collector roadways, there are a number of crashes that occurred on the freeway and the interchange of either US 395, I-580, US 50 in the south end of town. This graph summarizes the contributing factors to the fatal crashes within the Campo area. Intersections, impaired driving, older drivers, and speed play a big role in the fatal crashes that occur within Campo. And you can see that in the blue bars there, with intersections being the #1 location of the fatal crashes. This map shows the location of the fatal and serious injury crashes across the Campo region. Between 2018 and 2022, there were 31 fatal crashes and 81 serious injury crashes. Slide 10 here shows the locations where the stakeholders, a large group of us, went out and we visited each of these sites. We met in September to identify these sites, and again in December to finalize the locations of these. And on January 25th, I don't know how many, 2 full vans or so went out, and we visited each of these sites, discussed them, toured them, evaluated and discussed what kind of options we could implement at these sites and ways to improve safety at each of them. Commissioner Henderson joined us on the ones in Lyon County. I don't know if Commissioner Erb, you joined us, but I know Douglas County had representatives as well, so I appreciate the effort there. Commissioner Novak was there in attendance as well. This is an example of what we're looking at each of the locations. We're looking at things like sight distance, signs, lighting, road markings, traffic signals, or bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. Considering how all those factors could be viewed by and used by older drivers and heavy vehicles and elements like that. So large discussion, looking at all these different things at each location to see how we can make improvements and what can be recommended as part of the local road safety plan. Some of the recommendations will include FHWA proven counter safety measures. So we've compiled these observations from the field data, and now we're reviewing the comments we've received from all of the stakeholders and looking at implementation of these potential safety countermeasures. In total, FHWA has 28 countermeasures and strategies that are proven to reduce roadway fatalities and serious injuries. Some of these include lighting. Corridor lighting can reduce nighttime crashes by 28%. CRF, which stands for Crash Reduction Factor, is the percentage there shown on the screen, which is the proven effectiveness of these measures at reducing crashes. As another example, a leading pedestrian interval can reduce crashes by 13%, pedestrian crossing island can reduce crashes by 56%, and a pedestrian hybrid beacon can reduce crashes by 55%, as an example. So next steps for the local road safety plan, we're working on compiling, as I mentioned, the observations and recommendations from the field visit. We're working on a recommended list of projects, not only for those 10 locations, but systematic wide projects that could be implemented at all locations. We just highlighted those 10 for review, but our goal is to be able to implement recommendations on all areas that have high crash rates. We're looking at identifying a project prioritization for safety improvements. Next, in a couple of months, when we finalize the plan, we'll be back to the CAMPO board with the final plan and for the agency to take the safety pledge to target 0 fatalities, which is a requirement of the local road safety plan. We're looking at those programmatic safety recommendations and completing the local road safety plan so that our overarching goal is to be able to receive additional federal funding through the Highway Safety Improvement Program to be able to implement and construct these projects beyond our limited local dollars. So continuing to work with our stakeholders and outreach and engagement into the community, and that is what we'll be working on. Hopefully by April is our target. We'll be back here for that completed plan. That's what I have. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Just a comment, I have some on the back table, but I handed out a letter I received from Leslie Torres because I thought it certainly fit the particular subject at hand is local road safety. And I let her know that whenever we have a critical fatality or accident, we're always going to review our safety data and to look if there's something we should be programming in the future to take care of this. But I wanted to go ahead and include this in the record because I know that we're often working with subject matter experts in these arenas, not the everyday public. And so I assured her that that area and those intersections had been looked at and were going to be in the review. And so I just wanted to share the letter to even let the public know they can participate in these plans and to help us identify. And if we've missed an intersection or missed something that they know that we don't know, which to me, it was interesting to see how many near misses. So we're only getting the data on an actual crash versus now how many people are calling me saying, well, that almost happened to me there too. So that's not data we can quantify. So I really just wanted to include this in discussion so that the public knows. Let us know if you identify an area that really is of issue, that again, we don't know because we don't have a crash there yet. So just wanted to share that with
And
everyone.
I want to note, Madam Chair, that, Kelly's been coordinating with a lot more people than
Yes.
I've been dealing with is her management of this plan. And so she's been engaged in organizations in Mound House and other organizations across Carson City in discussing, safety-related elements and trying to engage with individuals. She gets a lot of credit for doing that work and really trying to make this plan the best that it can be. And so, bringing up other elements like you mentioned, the letter, helps build that story.
Absolutely. That's the perfect way to say it. The public can help build the story. That is a perfect way to say it. So, Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to express my appreciation for the site visit and how well it was, how many people participated in it. The timing was either fortunate or unfortunate that it was 2 days after the fatality, but everybody's mind was fresh on just how dangerous that intersection is. So I really appreciate all the attention it's getting now. And I know Kelly's coming out next month to the Mound House Advisory Board, so I appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Anybody else? Okay, I don't see any other. Oh, Mr.
Yep.
Novak.
I was part of this, and it's a difficult situation dealing with the data, the recent data, or sometimes the data's not as up to date as we'd like. But I think we're going to work through it okay. I still have heartburn calling it a local road safety plan, since local road means something different to me, and the only thing it doesn't cover is the freeway.
Mm-hmm.
And NDOT is taking care of the freeway, but we looked at NDOT roadways as well, US 50 and 395. So there's enough overlap, but I think it's clear if you have a safety problem on any public road, you can spend federal safety dollars on it. So I think this is a comprehensive look, and we're focusing on kind of the infrastructure side, but if there's enforcement, education, or other aspects that would really help out, like pedestrians at night shouldn't wear black.
Right.
Certain things you can do to help yourself. We can do only so much on the infrastructure side.
I think that's a very valid point. I know I had a discussion with some staff and that one of the considerations is even doing an educational program in signage. And so I did practice being the pedestrian for the sheriff's office, and that was an illuminating endeavor. And one car crash to go with it. That one car stopped and the one to let me cross and the other one didn't, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, even though I had eye contact with the individual that did stop, it's that chain reaction that can happen. And so I really appreciated staff's thought of an educational program called Lock Eyes, I think is what, and I think that is, we have to do it together, right? The safety is, all of us have to be involved in protection. And like you said, don't wear black, cross it only at appropriate walks, go ahead and walk up another block if there's a signal, right? If there's a signal there, go ahead and go to where there's a signal and keep yourself safer and lock eyes. But it's going to take work. And so I know later we have some stuff on targets and things, and I know NDOT is here too, and we'd love our answer to be the target is 0, but probably not a reality, right? To get to 0 fatalities, because you're not going to stop people, but certainly where we want to go.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned, I was going to mention the Transportation Manager's report, Madam Chair, is that we are working on rolling out some safety messaging. We are working on printing some signs that we plan to install, talking specifically for pedestrians, but the campaign's going to be targeted for pedestrians and drivers. But installing some signs at some higher crosswalk locations where trying to get the pedestrian engaged to look at the driver. So we're getting those signs made with our sign division at the city level, and we'll get those out here as well as some messaging. We plan to do an ad in the paper and some other outreach campaigns associated with highlighting pedestrian safety and from the driver and the pedestrian standpoint.
I really do like that idea. And then if there's anything ever I can do, and I know Supervisor Schutte is also doing, both of us will be reading in the elementary schools that first week in March. If there's anything we can do to help message or put something out there or hand out a piece of paper that talks about it, I'd be happy to open all of my reading sessions with a, hey, dress like this if you're going to cross the something. I would be more
absolutely.
than happy, and I'm positive Supervisor Schutte would join me in that. And I'm going to bet, I think the sheriff probably usually reads, but if you have anything,
Okay.
we'd be happy to share that, because I know education is the best if you can start while they're young and really just have some fun with it and teach them, and then they can teach their parents when they get home, or their older brothers and sisters or something of that nature. But if there's anything you'd like us to do, please let us know.
Yeah, I know our Safe Routes to School program, right, Scott, our staff, Scott, he's been modifying his message as of late when he's been doing safety assemblies at the various schools and the school districts. We had a meeting with the superintendent to talk about what more can we do. We met last week with him on that. So it's definitely something we are focused on right now.
No, and I appreciate it, because I think oftentimes the public's really not aware of all the outreach that we do in the community, that we're, I have something that'll come up in my state of the city that's kind of funny, but we sure do plan, right? Everything has a plan, but I think what we miss sometimes is that we execute those plans, right? We really do. We plan so that we'll have success, and that's the objective. But if there's anything, again, that you can include in the big read week, to always remember that first week in March is reading week, and you have a plethora of city officials that could help you spread the message, we'd be happy to do it. So, anybody else? Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? Come on up, Denny.
Hi, thank you, Mayor. And Board, I'm sorry, but the deal is, thank you, and I'll get myself going here in a minute. I just got to crank up a little. The bringing up the read time, the library I spend a lot of time at, they're amazing. You might want to just give them the bug if they don't already have it. I didn't get to their meeting. I think they canceled the last one, but if you could just let them know, because they have story time. And they've got dozens of children there and parents, and dressing properly for crossing safer. But I got to tell you, I've worn that vest and I've had people look me straight in the eye and still try to run me over, because our minds aren't necessarily where our eyes are at the time. And that's unfortunate. So we almost have to walk defensively, definitely offense. So I appreciate that, but I'm so glad that came up in this. Thank you very much. And I appreciate your contributions in that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do I have any other public comment? Come
Donna Inverson, representing stakeholder Muscle Powered. Muscle Powered is, we're gearing up very much. We want to work together on this project. One of the things we'd like to see happen is a lot of information going out there in Spanish for the Hispanic community, because we see too many of the crashes that are happening with Hispanic names. And we'd like to see a forum going out, especially in Bike Month, with on the rules and regulations and responsibilities for pedestrians, bicyclists, and drivers. I think too many drivers don't know the rules, and bicyclists don't know the rules and responsibilities. I've called NDOT to get more they used to have the little pamphlets about rules and responsibilities, and they've told me they're rewriting them and they don't have them. We used to give them out at the bike valet. And so I'm hoping that NDOT's going to get those rewritten so that we can have them.
He's here. This is part of the local safety plan.
Because
I like it.
we used to give them out to everybody, to the bicyclists, the pedestrians, and the drivers, so that they knew what the responsibilities are. As a bicyclist, I know I will come up and I'm at a stop sign with a cross street that doesn't have it. Cars are stopping for me as a bicyclist, and I'm going, wait a minute,
Right.
you know, and if we all know the rules, there's less accidents, less crashes. And I can tell you as a pedestrian and bicyclist, you talk about, you know, the sight, lock eyes, but sometimes the windows on cars, I can't see their eyes.
Mhm.
So there's things like that. So yes, Muscle Powered plans on being very much involved and in this process.
Thank you. Okay. There's no other public comment? Okay, we're going to move on then to agenda item 5B, which is discussion and possible action regarding our annual safety performance targets for 2024 as required by the Federal Highway Administration. Ms. Schutte, may I have your disclosure, please?
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My nephew is Chris Martinovich, who is employed by Carson City and will be presenting this item. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his service with the city, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other resident of Carson City. NRS 281A.420 only requires abstention in clear cases, and the independent judgment of a reasonable person in my position would not be impacted by my familial relationship. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting on this matter.
Thank you so much. Mr. Martinovich, are you going to start us off?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager, again, filling in for Kelly tonight. Here with me is Lacey Tisler, our Chief Safety of, you have to get your title, Lacey, I'm sorry. Going to talk us through the state's safety performance target setting process and other related items related to safety that occurs at the statewide level. At the end of that, I have our slide that we've seen before about CAMPO-specific safety information. So when we get there, I'll jump in. Otherwise, Lacey, I'm going to turn it over to you. This is the button to advance the slides. That one.
Thank you, Chris. As he stated, I'm Lacey Tisler. I'm the Chief Traffic Safety Engineer for the Nevada Department of Transportation. And I was going to say this in my closing comments, but coming in after the Local Road Safety Plan presentation, I'm just going to jump ahead and say thank you. Thank you for your partnership. For everyone in the CAMPO area, everyone in the public, we cannot reduce these fatal and serious injury crashes without partnership and without active participation at each level, not just in our government sector, but our active community members. People like you, Chair Bagwell, taking this message to the, yeesh, I didn't mean to
You're all right.
get teared up already, but taking this to our young people. So thank you.
It matters.
It does. It very much matters. All right. So now on to the more formal piece. So thanks for the opportunity to present the Nevada Highway Safety Improvement Program's performance measures. To set the context before I get to the performance measures, I'm going to start with a brief summary of the Highway Safety Improvement Program and the data reported in the 2023 Highway Safety Improvement Program report. I'll move into the performance measures as set by the DOT for both calendar years 24 and 25, and then wrap up with the presentation with some of the direction that we received from the FHWA based on our reporting metrics. So, the Highway Safety Improvement Program is a core federal aid program with the purpose of achieving a significant reduction of traffic fatalities and serious injuries on all public roads. It includes non-state-owned roads and roads built on tribal lands. The program requires a data-driven strategic approach to highway safety, and it focuses on performance. It's legislated under Section 148 of Title 23 United States Code and regulated under Part 924 of Title 23 Code of Federal Regulations. It has three main components: the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, the State Highway Safety Improvement Program or Program of Highway Safety Improvement Projects, and the Railway Highway Crossings Program. I'll be focusing on the first two, predominantly the Highway Safety Improvement Program and the Strategic Highway Safety Plan today.
Because we don't have a railroad running through our city. No, go ahead.
It's a different funding source, and
No, I'm just giving you a bad time.
Greg knows way more about it than he should, and we can talk about it anytime. We're not
Yeah.
going to the museum today. Its objective is to enhance the safety and reduce the number and severity of crashes on all of Nevada's roadways. Nevada receives approximately $25 million a year from the FHWA to support the program. The funds must be used on projects identified in the Strategic Highway Safety Plan and as reported on in the next few slides. It should be collaborative, and all traffic safety partners are encouraged to be part of the Strategic Highway Safety Plan process. So legislation requires each state to submit a Highway Safety Improvement Program report that describes the progress being made to implement the safety improvement projects, assesses the effectiveness of the program, and describes the extent to which all improvements have contributed to reducing fatal and serious injury crashes. The FHWA then compiles this information and produces the Highway Safety Improvement Program National Summary Report. The report provides an aggregate information for all states' progress in implementing Highway Safety Improvement Program projects. Nevada follows the guidance given by the FHWA in the Highway Safety Improvement Program reporting guidance. And that guides the frequency and schedule, content and structure of the report, and the provisions related to the protection of data from discovery and admission into evidence. The DOTs each use an online tool provided by the FHWA to support the reporting process. So the Department of Transportation follows the process established in the 21 through 25 Strategic Highway Safety Plan for target setting, which does have a goal of 0. It is a goal of 0 by 2050. It's doable.
Good.
So it was developed by a multidisciplinary, multi-agency team that was part of the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, and then approved by the Nevada Executive Committee on Traffic Safety. That committee is no longer in an active committee because it has been supplemented by the Advisory Committee on Traffic Safety as approved by the 2021 legislature. So that committee now has more authority. And it also receives approval from the FHWA through the Nevada Division Office. All right, so here are the numbers we had to report in the last year. And based off the targets reported in previous years. We report on the number of fatal and serious injury crashes, we report on the number of fatalities and serious injuries, not the number of crashes, because it's important to look at the lives lost, not the number of events that happened on our roadways. The targets set in the 2021 report were calculated using a rolling average of data from calendar years. I messed up my notes. I apologize. But every year's target is based on a rolling average of the best 5 years of available data. And we can see in this report that my team put together in August and September of last year, based on calendar year data up to 2022, Nevada failed to meet its targets for the number of fatalities, the number of serious injuries, the number of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, the numbers of serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, and the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. It's the first time, at least as long as I've been there, that we have failed to meet all 5 targets. And I will say that a large part of that is the impact from the calendar years 2021, 2022, and 2023. I take that back. This does not include 2023, 2021, and 2022. Based on the fact that we failed to make significant progress or meet all 5 targets, we are expecting the FHWA to require an implementation plan, which will push us to double down on all of the work that we are doing in the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, and it will come to our partners too. I mean, how do we help you help us in every community in the state? All right.
But no more money to implement anything. We'll still get the same 25 million. Yeah, I thought.
I'll
was
get
the
to that,
problem.
but yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I was hoping.
So, all right, so we'll move on to the targets, because that's really what I was asked to present on. These are the targets that were set for calendar year 2023. We don't have enough data to make assessments on all 5 targets yet using the fatality analysis reporting system numbers, which are our final numbers from 19 to 21, and the preliminary numbers from 22 and 2023. We are expecting to fail, at least on target number 1. Preliminary numbers show the rolling average will be 364.8 fatalities, which means we'll miss the target by 17.
Is that worse than the last slide?
Um,
Are we getting worse or did we get better?
You know, I didn't have a back and forth on this.
Oh,
Yeah,
it did. It
it
got
did.
worse.
It did. Yeah. This is not exactly part of my presentation, but I put the numbers. 2020 was the highest year we'd had in a long time with 333 fatalities. 2021 had 385. 2022 had 416. 400, yeah. And the preliminary numbers, and these could change because 2023 is still so early, are 386. So huge, huge jumps in the last 3 years. These do reflect similar trends nationwide, which I don't have prepared for this, but they're very comparable. All right, so the targets that we're concerned about. 2024 was based off of the same measures using the 5 years rolling average. We did increase our number because we lost the 2018 data point of 328 fatalities and replaced it with the 2022 data point of 386. So that does elevate our target number of fatalities, but it does take that goal of 2050 or 0 by 2050 and make it a little bit harder in the long run. So it feels easier in 24, but it's going to be a lot harder in 3 years, 5 years, 8 years.
When more of the early years drop off and you get the years with the high counts.
Exactly. And on that note, I know we don't have the numbers yet, but I couldn't not touch on the preliminary numbers for Nevada in 2024. We recently received a report on what has happened in January so far, and we have lost 38 people on the roadway system in the month of January. Those 38 people include the 2 young pedestrians in the CAMPO boundaries and another 18 pedestrians throughout the state. So 52% of the people we've lost this year have been on foot. It's incredibly alarming what we're seeing right now. So, sorry.
Yeah, don't like that answer. Keep
No,
going.
I don't either.
Yeah.
So these are the targets that Nevada set based off the 5 years of rolling data. I believe when Chris gets to the following slide, these are the targets that he will be asking you to approve. But these are based off the best 5 years. And we need help making them. All right, The following slides have a lot more hope. So the first thing I want to summarize that we received based off our data from the Highway Safety Improvement Program and the Strategic Highway Safety Plan from the FHWA is the focused approach to safety. A team reviews all of the Highway Safety Improvement Program reports and the state's strategic highway safety plans to understand each state's data regarding specifically roadway departures, intersections, pedestrians, and bicyclists. That is because they are seeing the most actionable items and involved in about 90% of the crashes in the US. This one. This is a map of the intersection and pedestrian, well, all the focus approach states. I intended to highlight Nevada and Arizona because we are the intersection and pedestrian focused states, but that did not get on my slide update, and I apologize. The focus approach to states are eligible for additional resources from the FHWA, such as people, time, tools, and training. It does not include extra funds from the FHWA. However, the resources do include an incredible team of experts that can help DOTs, it can help other agencies in the state work through some of the critical traffic safety issues, especially when we're seeing uncommon trends, and they can help come up with scoping and design ideas to get us started and moving the right direction.
So just so I can clarify and make sure I understood that, so if we had a high crash area and we were looking to determine alternatives, you know, should we do a rapid beacon? Should we just do more lighting? If we were looking at scenarios, are you indicating we would have access to have some professionals help us look at it and say, hey, option B would be your best avenue, or is that what?
I have an example on that.
Okay, good.
We have a pedestrian crossing issue in Reno that we've been looking at, and the facility is 45 miles an hour. Therefore, a rapid rectangular flashing beacon is not a recommended device.
It's not.
It is not, because of the high speeds, and I believe one of our public comment mentioned the inability to kind of see and recognize people. So it is not recommended at those speeds. Recommended practice, according to the FHWA Proven Safety Countermeasure Update in 21, is a pedestrian hybrid beacon, which is a stop-controlled device rather than a yield device. We haven't deployed those in Northern Nevada.
Yeah, we don't have them, right?
So my question was, how do we get the best pedestrian hybrid beacon that we can in an area that we haven't had one in kind of a unique roadway configuration?
Mhm.
So they've been helping us through that and helping justify our scoping efforts to take to our leadership for moving forward.
Interesting. Okay.
So.
Go ahead.
Can you give me an example of an uncommon trend?
An uncommon trend.
Yeah, so you said when seeing uncommon trends, so people, time, tools, and training can help when, especially when dealing with uncommon trends.
CAMPO is not the only area that's seen some pedestrian fatalities that have been a little bit of a surprise in the data.
Okay.
So that's a very good
So
example.
the fact that the numbers are so high in pedestrian fatalities, that would be considered an uncommon trend, for example? Or could be?
I would say yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. This is a timely presentation. I know something's on all of our hearts, so thank you. So yes, it's the focus approach states, and I did want to throw out that Nevada and Arizona, we have a lot of similarities. We're working together. We have resources when it comes to intersections and pedestrians. So those are the two where we get additional resources due to our data. And then we're going back to vulnerable road users. So in April of 2023, the FHWA informed NDOT that they were requiring, or that of the fiscal year 2024 special rule determinations. Those were based off the calendar year safety performance targets. So, it takes a while, but we get additional determinations. There are 3 special rule categories. First is high-risk rural roads, second is older drivers, and the third is the vulnerable road user safety. Nevada data did not trigger the high-risk rural roads or the older drivers rule. However, it did trigger the vulnerable road user special rule. This as well is not additional funding. However, it is an additional requirement that no less than 15% of the Highway Safety Improvement Program funds be dedicated to focus on the safety of projects or on the safety of any user who walks, bikes, or rolls outside of the protection of a motor vehicle. So this is a bicyclist, a scooter,
And what
somebody-
percentage are we spending now? What does that hit actually mean? Or are we already spending 15%?
we spent 15% last
Yeah.
year. That was the first year we had to quantify it, and we are on track to spend the 15% this year.
Lacey, one point. We're not in trouble for high-risk rural roads
Correct.
now, but we used to be.
We have been historically.
So it looks like some of the past NDOT safety measures have addressed that. And
Yes.
now the pedestrians have
Yes.
risen. And on intersections, I don't know if you're going to get to it, but what's the latest feeling on roundabouts? Because they have an intersection benefit and probably a pedestrian benefit too. So is there any other guidance? Because there's more supposedly coming up at Tahoe as well.
Well, roundabouts are a FHWA proven safety countermeasure, and the data shows they reduce fatalities at intersections by 95%. So it is a huge reduction. And the main focus of that is because they slow the vehicle. So even when there are collisions in a roundabout, it is at a low speed where the kinetic energy does not have the impact to harm the human body or lessens the harm on the human body. So they are an excellent tool for reducing fatal and serious injury crashes. They're also an excellent tool for speed management.
Okay, thank you.
You know, I'm just going to comment if I can on that. Anything we can do for educational purposes on roundabouts, because I want to say as far as work in the roadways and things, they're like the least popular attribute when staff is presenting projects with roundabouts. We get just a plethora of pushback. And I know for this committee, the road safety is so vital and so important to all of us that we recognize that it really does save lives. And so when you look at this data and say, well, 21 out of the 35 occurred in the intersection, right? And that tells you of these fatalities that an intersection really is one of the most dangerous things for a car or a pedestrian. And so I don't know what education can be done. I don't know what that method is. But anything that we can do to help, again, educate people, I think would be wonderful. And they have them all over Europe, and I know all of that, but I think they're bigger. And so that's part of the problem, that maybe ours are a little bit small or things like that. But, you know, anything we can do to help the public recognize that it's about saving lives, that we do roundabouts. That's the only reason. So
Absolutely, and letting public know and understand why we're doing that, and it's not because it's an inconvenience, is important. And I will note that I have a very good relationship with one of the newest engineers that was picked up by CAMPO, and I can definitely help support anytime that does come to public comment and there's any information needed.
be great.
All right, so my last comment on this slide is, based on what we're seeing in current data, is we will expect to be triggering the vulnerable road user special rule next year, and probably for a number of years. It triggers anytime there's over 15% of the total fatalities are vulnerable road users, and data in the last couple of years was around 30%. And with that, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present a little bit of our program. I know the focus was the safety targets, but did think targets without context was appropriate. So at
And
this
I
time, I'll
agree
turn
with
it back to
that.
Chris.
A target doesn't mean anything if you don't have a context to it or an understanding or even a why. Why do we even set them? I think I get that we do all these plans, and that's why I even asked the question on the roundabout, because, you know, I certainly get a lot of pushback and a lot of, you know, how could you, I don't want to say this bluntly, but how could you be so stupid to put a roundabout in? And it's like, because when I'm looking at these numbers, I want to save people. And if the and the evidence tells me that a roundabout is a good answer. And I think that's what messaging gets missed, is we're looking at the evidence. Do we love them? Does the community love them? Maybe not. Maybe not. But I think as you get used to them, you like them more. But not everyone loves them. I'm not going to, right? And they have their points of view. But for me, I want to save lives. And so I'm going to look at them. And I just, that's what gives this context and the why behind what we're doing. Yeah. So, all right. Is this us, Chris?
Yeah, so I want to, on the slide on the screen here shows we track at CAMPO our own internal crash and 5-year rolling averages. You've seen this graph in our network monitoring report, which is rolled out every November. We've updated it. Kelly's updated it with the latest available data from 2023. So you can see there our rolling average. Our target would be 7.3. We had 5 fatalities in 2023. So our rolling average is 7.6. And so you can see that for all those different categories there on the screen. Very similar to NDOT, we target 0 in 2050. So it's a straight line from that rolling average, just for context specific to CAMPO. Exhibit 2 in the item on packet page 29 is the list of the 2020, shows 2022, 2023, and 2024 targets. We would be adopting the 2024 targets as shown on that exhibit in the 5 categories listed there to support the state in their endeavor to meet the targets. So that's what I have. Any further questions? Happy to.
Comment? Greg?
Sure. I have no problem with these targets, and they are statewide. And, it comes down to Carson is a small piece of this big puzzle. And I don't know how you're going to work it with other local road safety plans or how you deal with things that are on state highways. Looking at all the backup material had here, the previous reports, that there have been NDOT safety projects in Carson City that maybe didn't get highlighted at all. So I don't know if you want to touch on that, because you haven't been ignoring Carson City.
Thank you for the question. Historically, the Highway Safety Improvement Program reports have been limited to only projects that have been funded with Highway Safety Improvement Program dollars. As you well know, 25 million does not go far, and not in a state as big as Nevada is. I think there's an opportunity, and I'm working with Deputy Director Sandra Rosenberg to look at highlighting our safety wins, all of them, regardless of the funding source, quantify those and show them with our targets. It's hard to report only on the number of lives lost on the road. So what are we doing right? Where are we getting our successes? How are we getting off the high-risk rural road special rule? How do we highlight that better?
And another thing, I watched the NDOT board meeting and also saw that Lake Tahoe has a safety plan, and NDOT's US 50 East Corridor plan is out for comment, and that does affect CAMPO, since there's some signal work that Carson City staff has to take care of up at Douglas County. And roundabouts, it looks like we might get a future one at the intersection of 28 and 50, which is high speed, to say the least. So, good luck with those, but there's other things out for comment. And, everybody take a look, because they do listen to the comments, because I've commented. So, hey, thanks.
Anybody else? Okay. Lucia?
This was the most knowledgeable and well-done presentation from any NDOT staffer I've ever seen. Tremendous job, and thank you for being here. My comment is, even if we're only 5 fatalities out of 381%, I would just ask that NDOT staff, yourself, and I know you do, continue to make every effort to spend those limited dollars equitably so that CAMPO still receives a portion, even if we're smaller numbers-wise, because our fatalities matter too, as you know. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you for supporting the local road safety plan, because that's going to make it a lot easier for us to do that.
Okay, is there any public comment on this agenda item? Denny?
Denny French, Carson City, thank you. As far as the roundabouts, one of my difficulties is that they are relatively better as far as scientific studies, as far as not having or contributing to T-bone type accidents, which are most deadly and such, but they're still causing incidents, and they are still causing accidents, or at least people are still struggling till we get used to it, until people start to slow down. I appreciate that. But I appreciate your thought as to how do you get across something that's a danger, a hazard. I'm having that difficulty in several different areas of my concerns, is pointing out, hey, we've got a problem. Would it be that we aren't doing something, we are doing something wrong? And having the community help by making comments really does make a difference. And I want to encourage people to come down on many different subjects, or get a hold of your supervisors, get a hold of NDOT, get a hold of CAMPO, and let them know what's going on. I haven't reached out and said, hey, this corner's like this, but I'm going to in the future let them know. I'm having people constantly, and the suggestion by Donna, and I can't think of her last name, about the fact that we have tinted windows now. So it really puts us in a real awkward spot as pedestrians. And so I would really like to legislate those away, but in some places they have certain tinting and you can't go past that. I would like to encourage that here, and I know it would be a legislative thing, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Do I have any other comment on this? Okay. Then I'll take a motion. Oh, I missed one, sorry. I didn't see that you wanted, come on it.
Heather Kell. It's not that people were really truly upset about the roundabouts. It was the majority that didn't want a total distraction that will cause more accidents from New Mexico in the middle of one. But I have been begging and pleading since you decided to build Carson out to maximum capacity and just piling things on, not having developers pay for anything. And that is what's happened. What we're missing is lighting. We need more undulations where you have crammed so many houses and places, like where people have gotten hit, where I live, on Little Lane where someone died, that you guys just keep cramming people in and think nothing of it with no lighting. More bike lanes, more dangers for more people to get hit. It's out of control, and I begged and pleaded with all of you from the board and planning commission to go over to Silver Oaks, because I have lost count of how many times I have had to run with my grandchildren to get out of the way of a car. Because these kids that are coming from the college are speeding. And that's where we need more lighting. That's where we need undulations. We need something. And the developers get a pass on it all. And I really find it disturbing when people like myself have come to all these meetings, begging and pleading for you to look at how dangerous these places are, where you have crammed people in. And there's no outlet, there's no way out with the medium where most of the kids go skateboarding and go play at the park. And I mentioned that too. And that never seemed to cross your minds or have any concerns about our children that I begged and pleaded with you guys to look at. So I hope that you'll take that into consideration. Thank you.
Do I have anyone else? Just make sure. Okay. Bring it back for a motion. Lucia.
I move to support the Nevada State Safety Performance Targets for 2024.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect that was unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 6A, our transportation manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I first wanted to welcome Casey Sylvester as our new transportation traffic safety engineer, or transportation traffic engineer for CAMPO Carson City. He's back there sitting next to Chief Traffic Safety Engineer Lacey. So he joined us a couple of weeks ago. He comes from NDOT, signing and striping background, as well as traffic signal, traffic operations background. So a good compliment, a good add to the team. I appreciate him.
Welcome.
The other thing I wanted to mention relevant to Campo is that we're in the middle of our FTA triennial review. Rebecca has been taking the lead on pulling the data together and reviewing that, and we're going to be going through that this summer. I know Commissioner Maloney's been through those, and so it's a huge lift for staff, and we're plugging away on that. So if we're not as responsive the next few weeks, I apologize. We're chugging through data and forms and paperwork, so look for that. That's what I have on the Transportation Manager's Report.
Perfect. Okay, we're now going to move to agenda item 6B. Does anyone have any comments or anything?
I'll note 3 things for next meeting. We are working on the next 2-year Unified Planning Work Program, the UPWP. So we should anticipate rolling out a draft in March. We're also pending some discussion at the Regional Transportation Commission. We'll be working on a TIP amendment for some adjustments to projects. And the May meeting, we're trying to cancel that one, as Kelly and I will be in New Mexico presenting at the AMPO, the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organization, spring symposium on public participation and other elements there. So that falls at the same week, and so we're trying to juggle things to make sure we can get everything in, but cancel that May meeting. So just put that on the back burner there.
Okay. Does anybody on the board have anything to share with one another? Nope. We've had enough? Okay. All right, then I'll go to final public comment for Campo.
Thank you, and Mayor, I appreciate all of this very much. I always tend to learn something, and I've also learned my ignorance in so many things, so I'm looking forward to more understanding. I do have a concern about the rampage for disabled and such to sidewalks, and Campo can put that in. I feel that's a safety consideration, that the design may have to go back to the federal government, if not for sure the state, but they need to redesign it so it functions all year round, that it takes care of the rain, it takes care of the snow, that it compensates for those things and makes sure that we can still get up on the sidewalks to utilize them. And I'd appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe potentially for just a thought out there, Chris, for a future discussion, and maybe, I don't know, the rest of you on Campo can tell me if it fits for you too. Would a discussion on ramp rules and things like that be effective for you? I know in Carson City, I'm getting lots of questions and some people that have been in wheelchairs lately indicating that the weather and things, they're not usable and stuff, but I don't know, I can make that an RTC item versus a Campo item. I want to be conducive to you guys too. For you, not that many, not that big? Okay, then we'll move that for an RTC discussion. Okay, I just wanted to offer it out there if it would be helpful to all of Campo. Okay, is there no other public comment? Then we are adjourned as Campo, and about 5 minutes or so, we'll come back as RTC. Thank you for a good Campo meeting. Appreciate it. Regional Transportation Commission to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Schutte,
Here.
Member Novak,
Here.
Member Maloney,
Here.
Member Dodson. The quorum's present.
Thank you so much. I'm now on opening public comment for the RTC. Do I have any? For regional, thank you. We're now on our minutes of January 10th, 2024. Does any member have any changes? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion for approval.
Wrong last time. I move to approve the minutes of January 10th, 2024 as presented.
Second.
And in a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. We're now on to agenda item 5A, discussion and possible action to certify the Nevada Department of Transportation's total mileage of the city's public roads and to identify the total mileage of improved roads maintained by the city for the purposes of motor fuel taxes. Ms. Schutte, may I have your disclosure, please?
Yes. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My nephew is Chris Martinovich, who is employed by Carson City and will be presenting this item. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms for his service with the city, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other resident in Carson City. NRS 281A.420 only requires abstention in clear cases, and the independent judgment of a reasonable person in my position would not be impacted by my familial relationship. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting on this matter.
Thank you so much. Mr. Martinovich?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. Annually, Carson City submits 2 road mile certifications to NDOT. The first submission is for Carson City's total public road mileage. This year, the city has 303.91 centerline miles of public roads, which is an increase of 0.7 centerline miles more than last year. These roads come primarily from the Silverview townhomes in the south end of town and Blackstone Ranch Phase 1B in the Lampa Ranch area. Paved roads increased slightly to 286.16 miles, and unpaved roads stands at 17.75 miles. The second submission is for Carson City's total motor fuel tax road mileage. This is shown on the maps on packet page 18 for showing those roads. NRS requires a public hearing for which roads are maintained by the city and identified for presentation. For a road to be eligible for fuel tax compensation, it must be classified as a type C or better, as defined by NDOT and the Legislative Committee for Local Government Taxes and Finance. Those exhibits of type B and type C roads are shown in the attachments to the staff report. We are reporting 303.34 miles of motor fuel tax road this year. These are slightly up from last year, where we reported 303.21 in total public roads and 302.65 in fuel tax road mileage. That is the summary.
Thank you. So I just have a question in general, just because it was posed to me earlier. And so if I were to look at the pictures of the roads, both of these would be considered maintained, but they're dirt roads. They're not paved roads. And when I look at them, they appear to be in areas in which we're doing a lot of recreation activities. And so what is the difference on how you classify a trail road that we're doing engineering and items on, like our proposal for Prison Hill that we're working on right now, versus a road type B or C? What's the designation to know it's a trail versus a road?
Well, trails don't allow motorized vehicles, so there wouldn't be a vehicular road where somebody could get in their car and drive down that, where these roads are public roads where a vehicle could drive down
A
that.
vehicle is allowed. So
A vehicle
that's
is allowed.
really, even though a vehicle might do something it's not supposed to do, it's not a
That's
designated
not allowed, yeah.
vehicle road.
Right. The trails around Prison Hill are not vehicle roads.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because, some of them look a lot nicer than the one in the picture that I'm looking at. So that's really the designation, is if it allows motorized vehicles, that would be on there. Okay. Thank you so much for that. Anybody else have any questions? No? Okay, is there any public comment? Denny?
Denny French, Carson City. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you so much for bringing this up. I appreciate the explanation. Is really comes right down to it doesn't matter how it's engineered. The name of it, or what it's called, is based on its use. And I'd have to sort of be in a conflicting situation with the mayor's position on this, because my position is that there are going to be allowed service vehicles, emergency vehicles, of course. They're excluded from a restriction, but maintenance also will be there. And I'm also concerned that when we talk, we really should make that clear. It doesn't have anything to do with how it's engineered or how much money you're spending to make it. It's what you want to use it for. And I'm suggesting that we don't have, and this might be off the line as far as being able to bring it up, we just don't have the people to monitor that, to restrict that. We could use a lot more education for one thing, and ways to keep actual regular traffic out of there, and would allow then the horses, the bicyclists, the people walking and their dogs and such. So that has to be addressed. And I think that suggesting it's a road is sort of, or a trail instead of a road, is sort of selling us short. I think we should either call it a road, which I think it is because of the engineering involved. These roads haven't got the engineering, but they've got the title road.
No,
And so
I
I just,
completely understand.
okay, and I appreciate the fact that you brought it up very much, and I'll let it be at that. Thank you.
Right, thank you so much. Does anybody else, any other public, come on up, Robin?
Good evening, Robin Orloff. Talking about roads, so roads, the definition, I guess, is that motor vehicles can go on them.
Publicly.
What about all the roads in the OHV area? Are those classified as roads or trails, or how do they fit into this whole plan?
So this is just a report that we have
Okay.
to legally do that indicates what is a road. And so you can, I don't know, actually, I'm going to be pretty honest, right? You go, wow, I really can't tell. It's pretty red. So I don't want to lie and say it's easy to figure out which is which without a magnifying glass or something of that nature. But the objective for the tax distribution, that's what this certification is for motor fuel tax. And theirs is, it has to be a public open road, not an emergency vehicle, right? Not for the city's use to go up and repair the water tower or something like that. It has to be a public access road, like I could drive my car on it.
Okay,
I'm not violating any rules.
and then you're getting tax money for
Then-
those roads?
Then that road counts, so
As a tax?
in the
Well,
tax.
all the
base.
OHV roads, I drive my Jeep up, and maybe we can get some tax money from that.
If it's open to that types of vehicles, then it'll be a road.
Okay,
I mean, if we maintain it. I mean, there's lots
just something to
more
consider.
little rules that go with this. but-
Yeah, because they've been built really well. The Summit Road, the Toad Road, they're pretty easy to drive. Maybe they're a source of income for the city.
Right.
And to keep the OHV program going, maybe it can fund the OHV project if you get, no, I don't understand any of this.
No,
Okay,
but that's
thank
okay.
you.
But I appreciate it. I appreciate your effort. Thanks. Anybody else? So again, this is a certification for purposes, specific
Yeah.
purpose. Great.
Off-highway vehicles are funded through the recreational trails program.
That's a different, right,
It's a separate pot of money.
Right.
And that's just a drawdown on overall gas tax, but they're separate.
right. So not out of this pot, different pot of money, right? Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, well then I will accept a motion for our certification. Anybody want to make it? Okay, Ms. Maloney.
I move to certify the total mileage of Carson City public roads and the identity and mileage of roads maintained by the city as presented.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay, let the record reflect it was unanimous. And Chris, is there a easy map online that if people, pushed in on it, they could see if it was considered this public road? Is this map online and easy to digest if they wanted to go in and see whether it was classified as a public road for this purpose?
This
trail?
particular map, I don't believe they're online, but I know the city has our map geo site where you can turn on the different toggles to see which are public roads and private roads and state roads and federal roads. So the ownership roads are available on that map geo site.
They want to go in, just in case you want to push in deeper and look at the particular road and say, I wonder what this one is. They could go there. Okay, thank you. We're now going to move to agenda item 5B, which is discussion and presentation regarding the Jump Around Carson fiscal year 23 monitoring report and long-range fiscal outlook. I don't see there's well, it's discussion only, so it's fine. Mr. Martinovich.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This item is our annual Jump Around Carson monitoring report. This is the first report we've done since federal fiscal year 2021. We did not do a 2022 report as we didn't necessarily have the staff to be able to prepare and to pull the data together. So this report really encompasses 2 years of data, fiscal years 22 and 23. It's been enhanced slightly from previous reports where we've included some additional details related to Jack Assist summary stemming from some of the conversation we had at past meetings about Jump Around Carson and Jack Assist. So there's some new tables and information related to that. There's some new information about the efficiency of the service, specifically Table 2 on page 24, which outlines some of the past year trips, the cost per trip, cost per mile, cost per hour, fare box recovery rate, and elements like that. You can see there that in fiscal year 23, some of our costs are a little bit lower, particularly for fixed route, than they were cost per revenue mile than they were in 22, and even in 21, or for paratransit anyway. Compared nationally, though, that's a good comparison. What do we do? How are we comparing nationally? We still are quite a bit more efficient than most transit agencies nationally. As new data comes out, we're always updating this, but in general, we tend to be quite a bit less than other transit agencies. And I've shown that before in prior slides, and we can have that discussion in future meetings as well with partner agencies here in the state. We tend to be more efficient than most of those other agencies in the state as well. So that information has been provided in here as well. New information in this report related to safety, incorporating the safety targets and the safety events that we've occurred through the Public Transit Agency Safety Plan, incorporated that into this report. We've completed a rider survey, which is section 4 on page 25. The details of that rider survey are attached in the appendices of this monitoring report. We tend to do a rider survey every other year, and then the off year we do the non-rider survey. That's been our trend. And so this year we did the rider survey, and those results are presented in here as well, the full detailed results. Funding availability and capacity, several prior years are outlined in figure 3 with the expenditure and the conclusion of the 100% federal funding. We're starting to see the increase of local match come back again. We've discussed that previously at this board, and so those match comes from the general fund transfer, it comes from sale of advertising, it comes from our other grants at the state level that we can use for that match. So variety of sources on that match, but it is back here, as you can see on that figure 3, following the conclusion of the CARES Act and the ARPA and all the other funding that have come through for transit. And then lastly, table 3 outlines the breakdown of all of our open grants and what the money we have left on those. We spend those down every quarter. We do the reimbursement with the FTA for operating costs and capital costs and maintenance costs and all of those. So we continue to draw those down. They all have their specific purposes. And table 4 lastly outlines the federal funding that we have yet to execute. It's been obligated to CAMPO for Jump Around Carson to spend for its service. Those grants have not been executed as we haven't needed them. So we're still drawing down existing funding there. So yeah, that's the summary of the report. Looking forward to further discussion at a retreat with the Board of Supervisors. I believe that's been scheduled for the 29th. So more to come on this, I'm sure, then, and we can have a much longer discussion. But I'm happy to take questions or any other items anyone wants to talk about. So thank you.
Thank you. Does any member have a question?
Yeah, I
That's
thought that
great.
the timing was good with your retreat coming up, and then it sounds like you got your triennial with FTA, so, I mean, the data is all there. I think I had asked you about van pool program, possible for commuters, and that is eligible for FTA money?
I believe it is, yes.
So we could get into that. And nothing new yet on the downtown transit center. Again, that'll probably be discussed at your retreat, I would think.
We're working forward with some scope based on the short-term elements that we identified in that feasibility study, increasing signage, fixing some of the shelters, some new lighting. That project is getting going in the scoping phase, but we're not advancing the full design as we've discussed before.
Okay. And future route updates and other input. Does your operator help you at all with that, or is that just total staff? Is there a discussion back and forth of folks running the system day in and day out. They have some good ideas.
Yeah, we certainly work with our operator, First Transit, Transdev, on those service elements. Their drivers are the ones out talking to people. Everyone seems to be on a first name basis if you ride transit. So we hear those things and we work with them on areas where we need to go and ways that we can enhance the service. We want to be cognizant of, we're operating on those hour headways where we go once around the city in an hour. So if we make route changes, we have to be cognizant of being able to keep on that schedule. And so if we add a stop somewhere, if we, shorten a stop somewhere, we have to figure out a way to still make those times work. That tends to be the challenge with route planning. So we want to definitely engage our operators in doing that. But yeah, thanks for the question on that.
Good. And then in your overall database with the newer systems, you know which stops get used and which don't as much. I mean, you have some rough counts.
Well, that's still something we're trying to pull the data on. I don't have a really great answer for you right now, but as we're trying to figure out the best way to get that information.
Drivers probably know a little bit, but hard
I'm
numbers.
sure the drivers do, yeah.
All right, thanks.
Paratransit, we have it pretty dialed in, and I plan on sharing some of that information at the board retreat. Fixed route's a little bit harder.
Ms. Maloney?
Thanks, Chris. I love this transit monitoring stuff, so I appreciate you bringing this presentation. Can you speak a little bit, looking at table 2, it looks like the statistics are maybe a talking point is that we're sort of returning back to normal or returning back to pre-pandemic service, or maybe that's the trend. Can you speak a little bit about the fixed route and I guess the paratransit 2 comparisons from 22 to 23 for the vehicle revenue hours and miles? Because they seem to increase by about 10% since last year. I know we haven't increased service hours, we haven't increased the service schedule, but perhaps there are factors that contributed to fewer hours last year.
Sure. One of the factors that play into this are holidays. So if there's a holiday that falls on a regular service day, that could affect the service hours, service miles as well. So it depends on sort of when the holidays fall. That's one element. The other element for paratransit is we are seeing a little bit increase in riders. So it's not necessarily the pure number of trips, but people are going a little bit more places. And so that has increased the number of hours and miles as well. I can't speak specifically to, why we're up from 156 to 170 other than the holidays. 170 is more consistent with historical data prior to the pandemic. So I think there could be some just data anomalies in there, but we'll keep an eye on it.
Just as a follow-up question, does it seem that potentially our new technology that we installed for the counters, is that maybe also contributing to the higher numbers? Maybe we're counting people or riders better than we were in the past? Do you have any evidence of that or no? I'm just curious.
I don't know if I can speak to that right now.
Okay.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. This is great. Thank you.
So I think for me, what I'm looking as RTC for when we're going to come in and do the retreat with the full board of supervisors is it really comes down to what services that we think we need from the Jack bus. So we get requests for expanded, like I said, bus stops, maybe more paratransit areas, things of this nature, but all of that comes at a cost. And so it is difficult for Jack to compete in the general fund arena to say, give more to me. And so you notice in this report, that we are up to 504,000. And so maybe with staff or even I have access to more staff, we could look back and I can even do the work myself from our audits to look at the transfers of general fund over the history of Jack or even just the last 8 or 10 years. Because it's not that more general fund has not been given. We obviously get to discount the lovely CARES money or something that we got that didn't require matches and things like that. But when we historically look and you see we're up to 504,000, I think it will be difficult to start saying if I wanted to spend, and I think, what is it, table 4? Maybe it is. So table 4. So maybe that's some discussion point to say, okay, if I was going to bring in the 1,304,956, and that is from federal fiscal 21 that we have not drawn down. So we're already years ago allocations. But if I were to draw that allocation and I wanted to do it for FY25, how much that would require for most part operations is 50-50, right? So that would jump me to $1.3 million coming in and match. Well, I want us to be, where is it that we want to go? Because I'm just going to tell you off the top of my head, there is no way that the general fund is going from 504,000 to $1.3 million. I'm willing to bet that that's not going to happen. But what I would like to see is a true plan of what is potentially reasonable, or I think even something that Greg said. I feel all the time that I don't have sufficient data in this arena to make good decisions. I feel like I'm struggling a little bit about saying, should I eliminate a bus stop and add this one over here because it will serve a greater area of the community, or the bus will be ridden 4 times as much. I feel like I'm just struggling to understand where the true need is versus a want, and where we're going. So I think that's a little bit what starts bothering me here, is how are we, that we concentrate on this table, unless you all see it differently. You can help me today, just ideas to throw out for the meeting with the Board of Supervisors. Is this what we're talking about, is how we see the programming of these future dollars and where the match is going, and what's the next 5 years of bus replacements, right? Because those are 20%, 80/20s or 85/15s or whatever, but that we start to draw down as to what do I need in general fund to accomplish the goals that we see as necessary. It comes to the discussion that we had even last time about being careful and not expanding paratransit, because that's our most expensive production, right? And so what's the best use? But it may be the people that actually need it more than the regular bus. And I find it difficult that I don't know the answer. And I think that it's a great dialogue that we can start to have with the Board of Supervisors as a whole, because they have to give us the budget money for us to make the decision, right? Because we can only play around with what appropriation we're given from the general fund. So I ask all of you to just really put your thinking caps on and to help guide staff, right? And to give them good direction, and that the board can then look to, because that's where supplementals, and that's really the timing for the meeting, is we will be doing our supplemental budget requests, and that's where the competition for any available general fund dollar occurs. And so if you don't want this to be $505,000 in general fund, we're going to have to make the case for it. So I just put that out there. Probably more than you wanted to know, but you're like,
No,
oh,
it's real money.
yes.
Chris,
it's
just to
real money.
check on that, are any of these FTA apportionments ever in danger of lapsing?
Yes, they are. We need to obligate fiscal 21 in the next year or so.
because they usually have some, you know,
And then once we execute
get
them, we
old.
have to spend them in a certain amount of years.
and we still can't transfer FTA money to highways, but you're doing enough as you can on sidewalks and bus stops and other things.
Right, and I think that's the important distinction here is, yes, 50% operating, if that were all operating, then we would need $1.3 million. But maintenance, which is another significant portion of the cost, is 80/20 as well. So there are other factors in there that reduce the matching share so that it's not the same, it's not a dollar for dollar if we spread it across those different uses. Additionally, as is evident, we draw down grants over multiple years. And so it's not a one-time, we need $1.3 million 1 year so we can spend this 1.3. I mean, a $500,000 over 5 years gets us to that 1.3 drawdown. And so there's a time element as well that I want to note, and that's evident by the age of some of these grants, is that it takes time to draw them down. Other federal funding, other non-federal funding sources like redevelopment funding can be used to leverage this FTA money. Looking at partner agencies such as maybe Tahoe has excess in local money that we could use. Maybe Washoe or Douglas County has local money that we could leverage some of this federal money for some of their service, or combined services, something like that. So there's other ways to consider that. Again, going back to the van pool, that potentially there's a revenue generated from riders of that, or from companies that want to sponsor van pool that could be potentially used as a reduction of match. So there's other opportunities there other than just the specific general fund transfer of whatever amount it happened to be for the fiscal year.
But if the issue is on federal fiscal 21's grant that we have an obligation period, and you're thinking that's only a year away, and even if I'd need to see that broken down with some ideas and plans for where we're going, and does that even, and it doesn't even take into account, right? Is that everything else spending out on the grants that we have open now?
We'd expect to spend, we're going to get close to spending this year our grants related to, I'm going to find it here, 2022's, no, wait, where is it? 2019, 5307 apportionment from 2019, that's pretty much spent out. It will be very soon. And then the fiscal year 2020 apportionments, which is on page, the second line on page table 3 on page 28. That's the next one we're going to start drawing down from, and we'll start drawing that this year. So we're gonna need that 5307 funding from fiscal year 21 probably in fiscal year 25. So the timing works
That's
out.
why I said it's perfect for next.
Yeah, the timing works out. It's just it'll take us years again to draw that down.
Okay, but that's really what I'm after, is that where are we going in Jack? Because again, if you don't have the Board of Supervisor on the same plan, we can do all that we want, but we're not going to accomplish it. And I don't know how it competes. I'm just being super honest, right? It's a tough nut when you look at the ridership. So I don't want to take anything away from anyone, but to expand it is a tough nut. Lucia?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was not prepared to have this discussion tonight, so I'm sort of trying to get my notes together. To your question a few moments ago about historic general fund transfer, my knowledge at least goes back to 2015, and in the first few years of this past decade, my understanding it was $400,000 a year.
That's about right.
And so, if that's correct, and staff would have to confirm,
We'll have to do that.
in the past decade, the general fund transfer has gone from 400,000 to 550. The difference, that 150K, is about 37.5% in 10 years, which is about 3.7% per year. And so I don't have this information, but 3% per year, I'd be curious on how that compares with other general fund needs in the city and how they have grown over time. My personal feelings are that transit, well, just in general across the country, operates on a shoestring budget, right? It's tough to fund, it's a tough sell. At the same time, we want to make sure our local dollars are going as far as they can go, and I'm sure all of the supervisors agree. And so to that end, looking at the total number of ridership over that decade with the general fund, how many people we're able to serve, seeing the trends in trips and ridership start to go back to pre-pandemic levels is very encouraging and helps me to justify that expenditure. But I couldn't agree with you more, Mayor, that if there is different direction from the supervisors amongst those competing needs, I think it's absolutely critical of this board and of CAMPO more broadly that our plans align with realistic expected funding levels such that staff have clear direction, and that will enable those staff to really optimize and be efficient with their time we're all rowing in the same direction. And so I'm thrilled that made it to that agenda, and don't envy you in those discussions.
Well, you're going to help. So I drug you across the finish line with me, you know. I just think it's so vitally important because maybe it's kind of the same discussion of a roundabout, right? So what's one of the things that I get complaints about all the time is the bus is empty. The bus is empty, and I'm going to be super honest, right? I have never seen a full Jack bus. Never seen it. I see one or two people get on sometimes at a bus stop. You know, I think the other day I was so happy, like you said, because oh my gosh, I see 8 people. And it could be that I'm not at the right time. I'm not pretending that there aren't buses that maybe have 40 people on the bus. But I want that data. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say is that we don't sell it to the public either, right? That no, here is route 2A, and it has 40 people every morning that count on this bus to get to work. I would love that data, right? Because all I have is what I see. And what I see is potentially insufficient number of riders to justify giving more general fund dollars to the project. And that's why I think it's a hard sell. When I'm competing with, should I fix some more potholes? Do I need to add another caseworker in my juvenile facility? Do I need to, right? When you start, that's what we're competing with, is everything. And that's why I really would love to see this as a more broad discussion, not just Lisa and I potentially striving for more money for Jack, but I'm not guaranteeing you even that's where I'm at because I don't have the data. And so I want to just be perfectly clear that I need to know what buses have 40 people on them. I want to know how many paratransit trips. And maybe I have another question that can set up where we're going. Do we have the ability in paratransit to limit the trip activity? So can I say, we're happy to do paratransit, but it can only be to grocery stores and doctor's offices, medical appointments?
I don't know that answer.
Oh, that's a good one to write down. Right? So that's what I mean by when we sit down and have discussions, what are the way, if we're going to expand the service of paratransit, what am I in for? It's no, anywhere they want to go, we would have to take them. Well, then maybe we're not going to expand it. If I could limit it and make sure we're getting them to medical appointments and to get food or things of that nature, then maybe I might expand it. But I don't know the answer. And so I look for those to come forward on the 29th, that you help tell me what the answers are that we should be considering. Lisa?
So from this conversation, I guess some of the questions we can be asking, what is the specific need? So instead of the general data of how many people are riding or what is the cost, that kind of thing. So what is the specific need? Where is the specific need? And who is the specific user? And maybe questions like that might be able to help us better get the data, but also better align this opportunity in such a way that it can be used more efficiently.
The way I was reading Table 2, it looks like there's about 500 riders, fixed route a day, and about 50 paratransit. You know, it's ballpark stuff. And then, and I guess the other,
Is it 500 discrete riders or two-way, 250 and they're, again, we don't know.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, good data. And I thought the survey was pretty good too, and there was a lot of comments in there that I wasn't sure if anybody was going to look into or follow up on before your retreat. But I think I saw one, I think the bus that goes out towards Costco, and almost like, well, if you went into Douglas County, the back way to that Walmart, there'd be a lot more people on it. But again, it's in Douglas County, and I don't know timing wise.
And then we have to give paratransit
Yeah.
to
back and
people in Douglas County.
Yeah, it just, how does
It's
that all?
based on the bus stop, right? If I remember right, if we were to put a bus stop,
3/4 of a mile, yeah.
right, we have to then service Douglas County with Carson City General Fund. And not that well, actually, I don't want the Carson City residents shopping in Douglas County. I will go ahead and admit, shop in Carson, please,
Stay
and
at
keep your
Costco.
tax dollars here. So maybe I will be honest and say I don't necessarily want to deliver them to the Douglas County shopping mall. And that's really where my question even came with, can I limit paratransit to not, to the grocery stores and necessary versus I want to go to the movies, or I don't know. I just wondering.
My estimation is we probably can't, but I'll look into it.
I would say the buses are probably most full at the downtown transit center. That's where the biggest crowds are. But again, somebody's got real data.
Yeah,
I used to work there and I go, yeah, there's a lot of people out front. So they're
I
pretty
look
full.
forward to it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anybody else got anything? Is there any public comment on? Okay, so enough. Everybody will be there on the 29th. Okay, and then, and we did, just general, we did start the fair revenue, so we got 58,900 for a partial year, so we'll see. And I know I just looked it up online, because you can see all our money online, so we've gotten like 60,000 in the first 7 months of this year, so. Can't use it as match, that's a bummer. It is a bummer, because we're looking for every dollar we can get, but anyway, that's what we're doing there. So now we're gonna move to agenda item 5C, which is for discussion and possible action for revisions in the scope and funding of some of our infrastructure projects in District 1, which is Carmine, and Gonai, and District 2, our Root Street project, and the American Rescue Plan District Pavement Improvement Projects, referred to as projects. And Lisa, I just
Again,
know
and
there's
there'll be
another
one
one
more.
coming.
My nephew, Chris Martinovich, is the city staff presenter on this item. My disclosure and analysis from item 5A applies here as well. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. He will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his city service, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other Carson City resident. Therefore, I have no disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting.
Thank you. Mr. Martinovich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wanted to take us through a few projects as there's been a few changes to some of these that I think it's important to get input from the RTC on for some direction on some of these. So the first one is the Carmine Street project. So the project as it was originally scoped ran from North Lampa Lane to Airport Road and included pavement rehabilitation, replacement, new curb gutter, sidewalk, complete street elements, also underground water, sewer, and storm drainage improvements. As many of you know, if you've driven out there, the storm drain system out there is non-existent and there's massive puddles everywhere. So it leads to deterioration of the road and just a, you know, not a good situation. So we programmed a variety of funding for that, $4.2 million in regional transportation and STBG funding. We received a CDBG grant for $325,000, and utilities had obligated around $2 million for that project. We advanced some of the initial design concepts, but because of the flat slope, because of the poor capacity in the downstream situation, particularly along the freeway and US 50 with inadequate storm drain capacity and shallow storm drain improvements, we were actually not able to connect any stormwater facilities that we need to into those existing features. So there's just insufficient connection capability to really solve the issues that we've identified out there. So there's a number of factors we're going to continue to look at. And so our recommended approach is to advance the design to a 15% level of design, really focusing on how can we solve the storm drain over the long term? What can we do with this water? What are the downstream capacity needs? Should we take ownership of some of the other areas of storm drain capacity that are private and turn them in the city? Looking at all these different options so that we can figure out what is going to solve the storm drain out there. But in the meantime, we do have this CDBG grant, and we want to be able to make some improvements. So that 15% level of design will at least allow us to, in addition to the storm drain, understand what improvements we can make so that they're not throwaway in the future. Can we make some ADA? Can we make some sidewalk improvements that we can build on later once we have the storm drain solution resolved? So that's sort of the general approach, wanting to obligate around $500,000 in that, which is comprised of those funding sources right there, 325 in CDBG, 153 in regional transportation, and 25,000 in stormwater utility funds toward that project. We would divert the remaining funds to other projects, and the utility funding would go back to the utility funds to be distributed by them and their projects. So that's the plan for that particular project at this point. And I'm happy to pause, or I'm happy to continue on if there's any questions. Board's discretion.
We'll take it by project so that then I can take an overall motion. So anything on Carmine?
Yeah, it's low. It was developed without the full infrastructure, so I know you need to do something there. So this seems like the most appropriate way, unless you can figure out the drainage. Is there sewer, or is that septic out there too? Is there other?
There's sewer. The sewer is all, yeah, sewer and water are all good.
But the freeway system is maxed out there.
The freeway system is okay, but we can't get the water. There's not enough drain. There's not enough
You'd have
fall.
to pump it.
It's not downhill enough to get to the freeway. It's too flat.
Yeah, so, okay.
I think this is the saddest thing.
So if we could get it to US 50,
Sad. We
then
can't
that's a
do it.
solution. But US 50 doesn't have the capability of accepting all of this water. So we have to look at those other components.
Drainage issue definitely has to be solved before you can do too much. But whatever you're going to try and do now won't be throwaway, right?
That's our intent,
That's the
is to
intent.
do enough design to understand what the needs are, where we can build and can't build, and then get something to try to make some improvements without just throwing it away when we come back with a larger project in hopefully a few years.
And the sidewalk work would not be pulled up.
That's the hope.
Because that, again.
We don't want to do that twice.
It just makes no sense.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
so when I think of sidewalk work there, is that on both sides of the street or one side? What are we talking about in the sidewalk?
I'm not sure we know yet. And so that's part of the reason for the
However much,
15% design.
325,000.
Yeah, I mean, curb ramps are running $25,000 a ramp these days. Sidewalks running $20 a foot these days. So it's not going to go that far. But if we can make some improvement, if we can get water, maybe we avoid a puddle, maybe we can get it into a curb to get it to run somewhere for now. I think that would be an improvement.
Yeah, I think it's truly sad. It's an area that has suffered for so long with the flood. It's just,
Is there anything on the city's overall drainage master plan? Stormwater? I mean, is there a possibility of detention basins somewhere that would help out? Or
The drainage master plan identified running the water to the freeway storm drainage system. We haven't been able to find an actual engineering solution to get it to do that.
shame. But again, you can't do what the science won't let you do, but it's a real shame that we thought we were gonna address an area that deserves a fix and that we just can't do it, so. Yet.
figured it out yet.
Yet. Where's that engineer we just hired? No. Do you have that skill set? No, he's like, oh, no, 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 no. Okay. All right, perfect. Anything else on Carmine? Lucia?
I was just gonna ask if the constraints of this project are more broad than transportation-related issues. I guess I'm supportive of the recommendation of staff, absent other data, but is this the right place to be prioritizing this project in the future if the constraints are outside of the transportation purview? Or is this more of a bigger city utility issue that needs to be addressed, like at the board level, for example, to make sure it is prioritized?
I'm not sure I can disagree with that. I think that we had identified it as a project for a variety of reasons, transportation related, and while we were there, we could help solve the storm drain at the same time, you know. I think we still have that CDBG money for transportation purposes, so I think we're still in that realm today, but I think you're right going forward. What are those storm drain improvements? I'm not sure that's something that the RTC would necessarily need to weigh in one way or another on.
No, I concur. I mean, we bring projects here that are using multiple fund sources. If it was only a stormwater project, it would not come here. You know, if we weren't adding, agreed. Okay. All right, Gonai.
Okay, moving on to Gonai. So Gonai Road, the project's scope was from College Parkway to Arrowhead Drive. The scope include pavement reconstruction, rehabilitation, along with required ADA upgrades. The project also includes some intersection enhancements at College Parkway and Arrowhead Drive, both ends of the road. Current budget, we hadn't allocated any funding to this. The original estimate was 1.5. We hadn't allocated any funding because we wanted to know how Carmine was doing. We wanted to know how our other District 1 projects were funding. So this was sort of, if there's money left, we would move into this area. So at this point, we haven't done too much other than a detailed scope of work for the project. We've identified the needs for pavement reconstruction, and we're going to look at mill and overlay. It should say may be an option, not Matt be an option. Apologize for that. As pavement thickness may be sufficient that we can probably get away with a mill and overlay rather than a full reconstruction, which would save cost. The intersection of Arrowhead Drive and Gonai has been identified in a traffic impact study recently to need more improvements, whether that's a traffic signal or other improvements, maybe a roundabout, prior to 2030. So we're considering that. I know that intersection gets busy a couple of times during the day, particularly in the afternoon with all the large trucks. And the intersection of College Parkway and Gonai could be modified to better accommodate the high truck use that we see coming out of there, particularly the right turns and the left turns. A number of trucks swing out into the lanes to make that right turn because of the small curb radius. So there's opportunity with this project to make it easier for large trucks to access the freeway. I think that has ancillary benefits as well, where we can keep trucks off of some of the local streets like Arrowhead or Bowers or some of the other streets. If we make an easier path for them to get to the freeway, that's ultimately where they want to go. So if we make it easier for them to get there, they're going to be less likely to use some of those local residential streets. So that's another reason for focusing on this project. The recommended approach for this is to advance the design. The estimated cost with all those improvements is around $3.1 million. We would pull funding from unused fiscal year 23 and unused fiscal year 24 regional transportation fund, which includes Carmine Street. Design would anticipate to take a couple of years, so we're looking at a fiscal year 26, or actually calendar year 26 construction for this project.
And Chris, I'll mention it, that this Gonai came up on the high crash location.
It did.
So it could qualify for safety money. I don't know how much would actually come in, or it's worth the effort to go after it. But it's still, like all these projects, if there's other potential sources, you might have to wade through.
Yeah, the intersection of Hot Springs and Gonai was one that was identified in the local road safety plan. as one of the 10 we've been focused at. There have been a high number of crashes there. I know Carson Medical Group is going to move into that location, so there's going to be more traffic at that intersection. That could be an eligible source of funding for that project. That obviously adds all the federal strings, but we'd have to weigh that. But if there's funding for some of those improvements, we can certainly do that.
Right. And do we have any better data on truck usage in that area yet? I thought also at one point the Planning Commission had approved a concrete plant over on Arrowhead, and I don't know if that's going to make it or not, but I figure it'll only get busier over time.
Yeah, I know the truck percentage, I don't have it off the top of my head. I know it's higher than most roads. The roads, it sees its fair share of trucks coming out of that whole industrial portion there of Carson City. So I don't have the percentage, though. I apologize for that.
Oh, that's okay. Thanks.
Okay, Lucia?
I just wanted to put on the record, I've told Chris this before, I am not supportive of an intersection at Gonai Road and Arrowhead. I drive it many times a day.
A roundabout or?
A signal,
Okay.
a signal at the four-way
Okay.
stop. Now, I drive it many times every day, and I don't believe it to be anywhere near the top priority of our list citywide. So that's my opinion on this project.
Does that mean you're not supporting this project change? Because my question on this one then too, we transfer our money by districts. So District 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. So I was wondering when you said construction in 2026 is how would it come around again to be? So I was trying to understand, are you wanting to move the $1 million from Carmine? You have 1.7 in transportation would move to other projects, right?
Yes, this all of that would come. All of that Carmine would come to this project.
To this project. And so is that the best use of that $1.7 million on all the other District 1 priorities, I guess?
This was, if we think back to the project list that we did back in June, this was the fourth of the 4 projects we discussed. So we had Carmine Street, we had Lampa preservation coupled with the ARPA, and we had airport and college preservation. So we were funding those, and then we had, if there was money left, Gonai was the next one up. And so with Carmine falling off, the money then falls to Carmine as the next project on the list. We'd have to go back, if we wanted to fund another project, we'd have to go back to that original project prioritization. And I think the next one after that was North Lampa Lane, and that required water and sewer reconstruction because those facilities were poor. And so that money wasn't available to do the North Lampa Lane reconstruction as the 5th project. And so there's no utility need on Gonai. It's primarily a transportation need. So that's why this one was as the next one on that list, if you will. If we're uncomfortable funding Gonai, then we would have to come back and figure out another project in District 1 to do, and I don't have that answer for you today.
So let me ask here, when I'm looking at Gonai, it says the intersection has been identified to need a traffic signal or other improvement prior to 2030. So isn't a traffic signal like $1 million, $1.5 million project?
It's about
is
$1
that-
million.
Right, so that's what's in this $3 million
A
estimate?
portion of that, but not the full signal. Nope.
So I guess what I'm wondering is there enough other project without the signal to justify giving you the $1.7 million to identify for Gonai? Or it's not worth doing the rest?
I
if we're
don't
not
think we
putting
can
a
do the
signal?
roadway reconstruction for $1.7 million.
Well, okay, I guess I'm still misunderstanding then, because I was taking 3.1 million minus the $1.5 million. If we didn't put a light in, would I not then be able to do everything else?
The light, only a portion of the light is included in that $3.1 million. So there's all the pavement reconstruction is, we're looking at close to $2.5 million a mile now in terms of pavement. So the full traffic signal light, the full signal, because we haven't identified if a signal is the right thing to do there.
Okay.
But to Lucia's point, it could be a roundabout, it could be other intersection enhancements. So I don't want to assume that we're going to do that without doing a more robust analysis.
Okay.
So that full cost isn't in there. but there's still need on Gonai from a pavement standpoint, from an ADA standpoint, from a safety standpoint, from a truck capacity standpoint to do a project out there. And so that's what this is meant to do.
If I may, Madam Mayor.
Sure.
Apologies for derailing this.
No, it's not.
I'm okay moving forward as staff presented, but I would maybe just double down and ask that all options for intersection are considered.
Okay.
And that we're making sure we're using the funds as best as we can.
Yeah, I don't think, or I don't believe what we're doing here is telling you, and let's put that on the record, we're not telling you to put a light in. Well, that's got to come back to us after you. So we're just saying that we're going to put $1,764,150. We're going to move the Carmine money to the Gonai
Yes.
project. That's all we're indicating tonight, not, okay.
And the
All right.
rest of the money comes from prior unused.
Right, okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Um,
That was good.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the right kind of discussion that we all should be having, right? Is like, what does that buy me? What does that get me? What does it do on a safety concern? What does it do on, like I said earlier, all these plans that we do? How does that progress something, and is it the highest and best use of that
If-
$1,500,000?
If
Oh,
traffic signals are roughly $1 million and a four-way stop is like 5,000, I
Yeah.
think we need to look
Every time.
citywide, where do you want to put signals? Or maybe if you have a signal that could be replaced with a four-way stop,
the other way around, so that you
Yeah,
can
that's
move the
still a
signal to the right
possibility, yeah.
location.
or
Yeah.
roundabouts or somewhere in
Right.
between, right? So,
Right,
okay, thank you.
all right, and then Roop Street.
Moving on to Roop Street. So this project as scoped was from 5th to Musser. It included pavement reconstruction, AD upgrades, water and sewer replacements. This is the project we actually awarded to a contractor, and then they chose not to sign the contract. So since that time, the project has been paused. The funding has been essentially sitting there waiting to be revived. So our approach would be to expand the scope of the project north to Caroline Street, which is one block north of Robinson. That would essentially complete the corridor, making it consistent with the RTP and other, improvements that have been made in that area. Construction of new curb gutter and sidewalk. There is no sidewalk on portions of this corridor, which is unique for such an urban area. And look at other utility upgrades as needed. I haven't gone into the details with them on what they need and where. Funding for this would come from the existing funding, 1.45 million. Additional funding was available from the V&T funds. There's additional rollover from that in the 24 budget for $628,000. Additional utility funding is estimated to be around $75,000. And then we've put in a request of $800,000 from the Redevelopment Authority for fiscal year 25, as this does fall under the Redevelopment Area 1. So opportunity there for funding as well. Construction, again, would be planned, this is incorrect, this would be 2025 as construction as our target on this one.
Chris, I have no problem with this one, but I know some of the comments I had is the city is redoing the courthouse a little bit out front. And then my favorite bunch, the state of Nevada has plans for their Capitol complex, not NDOT, but there's going to be a bunch of construction going on in that area. So I don't know how to get you to coordinate the best you can with state public works, but there's some better things we need to do with the state of Nevada.
I'm optimistic that we'll be able to work with the state's engineer on figuring out some utility improvements. That if we can get those put in before they, we do this project, that would be ideal. I'm hopeful they can do that. I'm not going to guarantee it, but hopeful they can do that. I know Darren and others have had some conversation with the state already.
Good, thank you.
Okay, go.
Last one here is our ARPA projects. So this was various projects across all the performance districts. District 5 was completed in 2023, so that one's done. Other funding, we have around $2.1 million available for projects. The District 1 project design is nearing completion. Will be bid out here in a few weeks and for construction this year. The design for Districts 2, 3, and 4 is continuing to advance with, we'll get those designs done mid-year and constructed in 2025, bid out near the end of the year. We've been looking at ways to increase the scope of this. There was a discussion of the Board of Supervisors, as Mayor, you know, and Supervisor Schutte are aware that there's potentially additional ARPA funding available. And so we've been looking at ways that we could easily expand these projects. So some of the low-hanging fruit would be to expand the limits of the District 4 preservation projects by adding in about additional mile or so of preservation. That equates to around $300,000. Other areas we could do is extend reconstruction portions of roads we're already planning to do. In the south end, Ponderosa, between Clearview and Appian is planned to be reconstructed. We could add another block there down to Roland. Similarly with Hillview, half the road was rebuilt with some of those new developments. We could do the other half of the road at that same time. Yes, the tentative estimates are listed there. So those could be bid alternatives that we could add to the ARPA projects. And if we have the money, then we can award it. If we don't have the money, we don't have to award it. So it gives us some flexibility there. I've asked our designer who's doing this, we've got JUB doing the design as a consultant, to go ahead and move forward with this. We will have to do an amendment for those designs, and that'll come back to this board probably next month for those increased designs there. So schedule doesn't change. We're going to push forward on these. It's just a matter of if that ARPA money is available, we'll be ready to spend it. So that's what I have here. Just a quick update. These are the other projects discussed. The District 1 Lampa Lane project is going forward. That'll be bid out here shortly. The College Parkway, that one had delayed due to some staff constraints internally, so that one's still going forward in design, but construction will be in '25. The budget for that one's $2 million in regional transportation and V&T funds. That's still moving forward. And then this last one here is just a table of sort of how all that funding breaks down between the different projects and where it's kind of coming and going. Got a Roof Street there on the top, existing funding, and then the existing funding, and then below the kind of the dark line is where we, the total of the projects, other District 1 projects, and then the remaining. So we've got about $60,000 of unobligated money, and that's cutting it tight, honestly. But we'll see how bids come in. I
Well,
Oh,
that's
guess.
how
But
efficient we are.
we're being very efficient
Sorry.
with our money.
Yeah.
And this does not include any fiscal year '25, as you'll note there, except for the redevelopment authority. So fiscal year '25 for District 2, those are separate projects. We'll be coming back to this board for discussion with in a later meeting.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I'll take a motion. Go ahead, Ms. Maloney.
I move to approve the revisions to the projects as discussed on the record.
I will second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you so much. You know, I know it's going to surprise y'all, but we're going to try a disclosure in a moment again for possible discussion and possible action regarding a determination that Sierra Nevada Construction is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder pursuant to NRS 338 for our District 5 Winnie Lane reconstruction project, and to award the contract to SNC for $1,529,287. Ms. Schutte, the disclosure, please.
Martinovich is still my nephew, and he is the city staff presenter on this item. My disclosure and analysis from items 5A and 5C apply here as well. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his city service, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other Carson City resident. Therefore, I have no disqualifying conflict, and I'll be voting.
Thank you so much. Just if you just give us a high level, a little bit on Winnie Lane. The project does have businesses, and just to kind of go over for anyone that might be listening, what you anticipate length of time and how we coordinate with the businesses to make sure they're not, or disrupted as little as possible.
Yeah, we will do some public noticing to businesses. The contractor and staff will reach out to the businesses and provide them information on schedule and timing, and we always work with them on, like, if there's a critical need. I must get in this driveway. We always try to work with the contractors and try to time that out. If they have multiple driveways, we're not going to work on both driveways at the same time. Always try to provide them ingress and egress. Try to be respectful for that. Our work days, I don't know the working days off the top of my head on this contract, I know, we work 4 days a week, so weekends will be, open and available. But yeah, I think that's the summary. We will be putting additional information on our website for this project. We've reached out to property owners in the past through mailers, and we'll be doing so again with this one. I do want to note that the additional funding for this project came from the excess that we had on Colorado Street. So we rolled that money out of Colorado Street onto this project, and that's where we found the additional funding for this.
Anybody have any questions on this contract? Yeah. No. Is there any public comment on this contract? No. I said, is there any public comment on this contract?
Denny French, thank you, Mayor. My comment is that I'm on Winnie Lane on occasion, and there were no real diagrams as to what the deal, but when you're talking driveways, a lot of those are coming from the commercial areas off of the Winnie, off of Carson, between Carson and Route. Is that the area that you're discussing?
The projects.
This project is between Mountain and
All the
North
way
Carson.
from Mountain, thank you.
Carson.
I didn't
Yeah,
just
not-
think, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I was trying to see if I could pick up the time frame of when we, because is it just really till it's done?
It's the timeframe's probably in the special conditions. The special conditions aren't typically part of this packet. I would imagine it's probably 60 or 80 working days, something along those lines.
For the whole project?
Yeah.
That's all? Okay, do you know? Adam's like, oh, shoot, I'm looking that.
No, I'll just say that the special conditions are incorporated by reference, but they're not actually attached to the
Oh,
contract.
good, I didn't miss it. I kept
So-
going, boy, I'm not finding this.
And that's
Okay.
typical because they're so extensive.
Right, I don't have a problem, just more looking for a 3-month project is anticipated, that's all in general. Unless,
3 to 4, yeah.
yeah, bad days, whatever, bad weather, something. Okay, 3 to 4 days. Okay, with that, I didn't have any more public comment. I will accept a motion. Greg?
I move to award the contract as presented and authorize the Public Works Director to approve expenditure of the contingency if necessary.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you. We're now on to the 6A, the Transportation Manager's Report.
One thing I want to mention here is that we've scheduled our next workshop for the Local Road Funding Initiative on March 2nd at the Community Center. It's Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, Community Center gym, this building and the gym. So look for information. Utility billing has gone out. We'll do press release and other information in the coming weeks.
Can you give me some format issues on that? Is that an open dialogue with the group, with the presentation? What methodology is that open house?
It's likely we'll have a brief presentation at the beginning or at some point during the discussion. Yeah.
And what is being presented?
We're going to have more information on the GIDs but based on the survey and information we received at the last public meeting about the assessment methodologies, what we heard, how it could be applied, what are potential rates, things like that. We're also going to have information on project delivery, how if we were to receive any money, GID or sales tax or whatever the source, how it could be implemented in terms of delivering projects, timeframes, costs, scales, things like that. We'll be presenting some of that information as well.
And that's what time?
10 o'clock.
Saturday. Okay. Then we're on to, how about our December street operations report?
December street operations report. Potholes last month were big again in December, 496. That's quite a few. I also do want to note, we are planning to add on this the number of lane miles plowed rather than plowed events. So look for that in the coming months as well. We're able to have a better estimation of how many miles we plow rather than just how many times we go out to plow.
Right.
So we'll have better information on that. Look for that in the coming months as well.
Perfect. Anybody have any questions? Great, that will be a wonderful addition. Okay, 6C, Anybody, any other communications? Anybody have anything to share? Just what I kind of shared on Campo is potential for future meeting is I wouldn't mind a discussion on an educational purpose, talking about when does a road trigger the ramp repair and what does that look like and what standard is that and is it working, not working? And then if my memory serves me a little bit well, we even have a report that we do with the federal government that deals with ramps
Yep.
overall, right? That
Yeah, Americans with Disabilities
Yeah.
Act Transition Plan.
right,
I
or
was saying.
something, but I think that that would be just again an educational as people have changed or different people are on different committees. You know, it's something that maybe we heard 5 or 6 years ago, but if, and no, it's not saying you have to rush and put it on the next one, but maybe in the future here, we could have something on that. That would be wonderful. Okay, anybody else have any ideas?
Just actually like to build on that, and it made me think about Water Subconservancy and how they have their public service announcements in terms of protect your watershed. And so speaking in light of the safety conversations, that perhaps we as a city can be thinking about public service announcements and informational items. When does a road trigger ramps? When does a road trigger a study in terms of impact to area roads or the safety concerns, that kind of thing? And nothing to decide right now, but I think I'm planting a seed for this.
I think you have a good idea on one is traffic studies or traffic impact, right?
Traffic
Instead of while a development is occurring in the planning commission and everybody is, it's always traffic. Everything is always, it's gonna be a traffic impact. I think it would be a great workshop style at this meeting to help inform the public of, and it sounds horrible when I say, oh yeah, it's a level D. It just has a bad connotation, right? Not in the traffic transportation world, but when you say, oh, we can have the letter D and the road is functional, it's like, no, it's not a good report card, but so maybe even just that is it would be a wonderful thing to put in maybe when we do the ramps or something.
Yeah, we can certainly add that. I am excited to have Casey on staff because we still have that long paused traffic impact study analysis that, I was spearheading a few years ago. It's still in the back burner. There is a need to, revise and revive our traffic impact studies here in Carson City and evaluate how we do that. And I think someone like Casey with his background can certainly pick that up
He's
from
smiling still.
where we left it. So yeah, he's smiling, so I'll load it up there, but no.
We're not running him out the door yet. That's great.
So yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. So then we are on to final public comment. Anybody have anything? It is time for us to go to Valentine's dinner. Thank you all so very much, and we are adjourned. It's wonderful. I'm going to make my 7:30